Excellent. Alright, so I'm on a big delay as I didn't mean to be, but whatever. Okay, let's start for today. So let's see, what kind of things do I want to talk about today? Today is going to be a special topic day. I think I'm going to discuss a little bit about exceptions and a little bit about maybe Flask. So, let's see, do I need to do any announcements? I guess the thing to say is that Project 3 is due this Friday. Next week we'll have a review lecture for the final. I'm thinking that the final exam will probably be something like 8 questions. Yeah, so yep, and then then it'll also have some multiple choice. Okay, so that's basically it. Some questions about Project 3 that I see coming up a lot. Let me just say, let's just say that, what was I thinking about Project 3? You can modify or rewrite any of the starter code you want. That's a question that's been coming up a lot. When is the final exam? I mean, that's a question. So let's see, I think I'm going to send the final out. The final has to be due the 16th, so I need to at least send it out by the 9th. I think I'll probably just release it maybe the 7th if I get everything ready in time. So probably I'll release it on December 7th, and it'll be due 11:59 p.m. December 16th. And remember, there's basically, so the problem is that there's not an extension on the final. And that's basically because it's not possible. Okay? So that, I think I'm going to give you more than a week to work on it, right? So I'm going to start at December 7th, which is the Monday, and it'll be due December 16th, which is a Wednesday, so you'll have about 9-10 days to work on it. So that should be okay. The issue is just you have to get it done in the time. Yep, we'll send out multiple choice questions as well. I'm not sure, maybe I'll release them on the Wednesday, December 9th. Yep, and then, so what other kinds of questions have people been asking about the project that I should say something about? Let's see. Okay. Okay, I think it's time to start the lecture now. Of course, special topics are not on the final exam, right? No special topic. Basically, everything on the final you've already learned. All right? So, let's start with a little bit of maybe understanding, at least in PyCharm, how to install a module. So There's a way to do it on the GL server, but here's how you do it in PyCharm. At least in Windows, you hit Control-Alt-S to bring up settings, like this. And then, as you see here, I've already been installing stuff. So what you have to do is you have to go to the project name, and you go to your project interpreter. You see I have a bunch of stuff installed already. Then you can click on the plus sign. I couldn't even vaguely say. So then you pick your whatever you want to install. So let's think of a module that I think Flask login. I think that's one that I haven't installed. Let's install that. So it shows you that it's installing, and it shows it installed successfully. So that is one of the most. So you go to Project Interpreter, and at that point you can then install the module package that you want. So, for instance, so there's a lot of built-in packages. So whenever we say import random, for instance, or import JSON, CSV, whatever. So these are all built-in packages. So these packages here are built into Python and exist by default. So the reason why some of these, so you don't have to go and install these packages, but if you want to use something like requests, so for instance, if we say import requests, like you've done in your and so there's a few different things that you can do with requests, and so you can either, basically the two main things are you can either do a put or a get, and so those are the two primary HTML things that can happen. So basically here, if we do a get, and then let's say that I'm going to do it on Wikipedia. So the one thing about request is kind of a very basic package. You need to remember that you have to do HTTP and then say www.wikipedia.org, right? And so the point here is that, and then you'll get the page data will pop out of that. And so the idea here is that if you run this thing, let's run it. Okay, so it doesn't do anything, so let's print out the page data, dot text. And so what this does, the dot text will get us the actual raw HTML that the page is made of. So this gets the raw HTML page data. And so this will just print it out to the screen. So we get to see what happens if we do that. And so there's a bunch of HTML, JavaScript kind of nonsense, right? So here it is, all of this stuff. So your lab assignment has you counting the number of links. And so I think the way that, so basically the excuse is, well, that's a good question. So here's what you get if you don't use the .text object. And so basically what this is this is a printed out object, which is, like, if we actually went and asked what is the type of page data, let's see what it comes out with. I'm not actually sure. Never done that before. So it's a requests.models.response. So that's what this thing is into. No, this is certainly not Project 3. So so the point here is that you see that it's giving you a response 200. This is one of those like HTML return codes, and 200 is the OK code, I think, right? So let me see if I can just find them really quickly, maybe. Yeah. So if you look at this, you'll see that, for instance, when you get like a 404, like 403 is forbidden, 404 is like thing not found. So for instance, let's find a website that doesn't exist. Okay, well, unfortunately that domain is under, this website doesn't exist.com is under construction. So, okay. But this website doesn't exist asdf.com. Now that has given me a not found error. So let's copy paste this into our requests page get. So not found page is equal to requests dot get. And so gotta put it in a string. And so now let's print out the not found page. So ideally, I think what this is going to do, hopefully it won't throw an exception. I think what this is going to do is it'll print out response 404, right? Because the response 404 is the not found response code. So let's see if that does. Let's see if it does what I say it's going to do. Nope, it's just going to throw an exception. Okay. Oh, look at all these things. That's wonderful. Well, so in that case, it didn't work. So, okay. I think the way, and then let's talk about a little bit about exceptions. So you might be like, well, this is pretty hopeless, right? This is pretty terrifying. So what we're going to do is we're going to do from requests import or from requests.exceptions import connection error. And then what we're going to do is we are going to say, we are going to learn about try except. So basically, whenever an error is thrown like this, it is possible to actually do something about that. So it doesn't actually mean it's the end of your program. So what we're going to do here is try. And so what does try do? Try is basically a bit of scare code. It says, do this code, but maybe it will explode. Okay? So that's what the try is doing. Now, what you need to do after a try, so you notice that there's a little red underline right here, which is indicating to me that the try is not complete. The try always needs an except here. Now, if you just do except like this, you can say something happened. This will work. So for instance, you notice here, instead of printing out the page data, it just printed out something happened. Now, there's also a better way to do it, so you can say connection error as error. And then we can generally print out the error to see what happened. So let's see what happens if we do this. Yeah, this is kind of like an if. It's kind of like an if statement, except wherever this thing fails. So for instance, if this line pops an exception, right? If you do try, then infinite recursion will go to an except. It will, because remember that a recursion error is also something that's catchable. So let me just show you here. So HTTP connection pool host equals this website doesn't exist, asdf.com. Max retries exceeded. And you notice that it's not in the red, right? This was just printed out, so this program will continue. So you need the except, because except is the way to say, except is the path out, okay? In case of failure, do this instead. That's what except means, right? So if a connection error occurs, well, no, because the thing is, like, if you do this code and it fails, it wants to know what to do when it fails, and the except is what happens when that code fails. So that's why you have to have an except. So now you can, there's ways to have a global, well actually let me just show you a different thing. So let's do something really simple that you've all been wanting to do all semester. And let's put all this stuff into some kind of... Sorry, I'm answering a 341 question. Okay, there's a debate. As usual, there's always a debate going on. So let's do this. And so here, I think the thing that happens... Okay, let me run this. Tell me an integer. And so, of course, what is the integer? 3. No problem. Okay. But now I'm going to tell you an integer, and of course the integer is going to be ASDF, right? And so here what it does is it basically allows us an easy way, whoops, I don't really want to actually do that. Yeah, it allows us an easy way to ensure that what happens is either x gets assigned to the integer, which is the output from input, yeah, that's right. Or alternatively, you can accept the value error. And so here it'll say it wasn't an integer. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. And so here, it's actually usually, so my hint is it's usually a good idea if you're going to have this code continue. Remember that x won't be created here. So what if you just leave it as an except and don't specify an error type? So that's also a good question. So what if we don't know what kind of error type the thing is going to pop out? So we're just like, let's try, and then what we're going to do is my list is equal to, say, 1, 2, 3. We're going to have x is equal to int input, enter an integer to remove from my list. And then what we'll do here is we'll do my list dot remove x. Now, so if you just have kind of this naked except here, the point is that what's going to happen is you don't know where the error is going to happen, right? The error could either happen here on this line 42, where it could say, oh, the user didn't input an integer. But also remember that here, I think it throws a value, or it may throw a value error as well. It might throw some other kind of error. I think it's a value error that it throws that says that if you try to remove something that's not in there. So, but let's say you don't know that. But you remember that this throws an exception whenever, so this throws an exception whenever the item doesn't exist in the list. And so the point here is that when you're looking at this, you don't know whether this one's going to throw the exception or this one's going to throw the exception. So in this case, what we're going to do is if you just have this and you say print something bad happened, right? And so let's do something. So tell me an integer, 45. Enter an integer to remove from the list. So we're going to enter 3 this time to prove that it works. And so that worked and it didn't fail, right? Because it didn't print out that something bad happened. But let's try it again this time. An integer, ASDF. That wasn't an integer. Let's enter an integer to remove. 77 seems like a good number. And then you say something bad happened, right? And the point is that the except statement here doesn't actually know which bad thing happened. It just knows that something bad happened in this code. So remember that whenever it throws an exception, what it's going to do is it immediately jumps to this except code here. So that's something important to know about try except, is that when an exception is thrown, it stops executing all code in the try, right? It jumps to the except and never goes back to try again, okay? So that's important. I think there were a number of questions people this semester asked me in other classes. Well, so yeah, theoretically. So I think, and so this is an except without a class type, so it will catch all exceptions that are thrown. Okay? The downside to not specifying, and so normally you see here, PEP 8 doesn't like it, so it's a PEP 8 violation, but let's pretend we don't care about that. The actual downside to not specifying the exception type is that you don't know what went wrong, okay? So for instance here, let me show you another one. So let's define my recursive countdown, return 1 plus my recursive countdown c minus 1, if c is equal to 0, return 0. Okay, so here's a silly little recursive function. Basically, it's just literally going to count all the way down and then all the way back up to C. We could have made this Fibonacci, or we could have made this whatever. So let's see what happens here. So let's try, and then let's create x is equal to int input how many times do you want to go. And so then we'll call print on my recursive function on C, which is not the variable I want, x. There we go. And so now we'll do an except, print something bad happened. So, is there a way of printing what type of error it was? Yes. So here, we don't know what's going to happen, right? It could be that there's a value error, or it could be that there was a recursion problem. So let's say here, let's say an integer, that wasn't an integer, let's remove 3. How many times do you want to go? So if I put in ASDF, right, it'll say something bad happened, right? But we know that the thing that happened that was bad was actually a value error. So value error as error, and we'll print out the error, okay? Something else happened, right? And so here's the reason why using a single except is good, is because, let me just show you how this is going to work. How many times do you want to go? Let's say we go 5,000 times, right, down in this recursion. So it's going to throw a recursion error of some kind, right? It's like a recursive depth error or something like that. Let's hit it. Recursion error. A recursion error of some kind. What is it called? It's called recursion error. So don't use it in Project 3, okay? I wanted to include it in Project 3, but I didn't end up doing that, mainly because I hadn't taught it, and there's other reasons. So this is the advantage, ooh, too many R's. So this is the advantage to so this way, what this allows us to do, you notice here that I can have multiple excepts, and the reason why I'm going to be able to have multiple excepts here is because if it's a value error, it'll go into this bucket here, and it'll execute this code, right? We can say, print, need to be careful when inputting numbers, my dude. Right, and then here you can say Python by default only allows about 1,000 recursive calls. right? And so we can print out different errors or do different things based on what kind of error popped out. So this is something that's really useful here, because what you're able to do is, even in these 2 lines of code, you have 2 different types of errors that can happen. So yeah, they're kind of like elifs in a sense. They're like elifs that get executed when a specific error gets quote-unquote thrown or raised. So now let's ASDF that integer, ASDF that thing. So how many times do you want to go? Let's say that we want to go 723 times. And there it just prints out 723 because it's okay. So this executed this part of the code. And then ASDF, ASDF, and then here, how many times do we want to go? We want to go 25,000 times. And so here it yells at us. It says, maximum recursion depth exceeded in comparison. So that's what this thing prints out as the error. And then here it says Python by default only allows 1,000 recursive calls. That's the thing that we just printed out. So this is a very useful kind of process, right? This allows you to do things that are kind of a little bit dangerous, right? Python is always throwing exceptions, right? Throughout the whole class, you've basically been told that whenever an exception is thrown, you're not supposed to do anything with it. Yeah, so is the error type a text string? No, so the error type is a class, but they overload their print method, so you're able to actually print out a message. So it's something that a lot of exception stuff does when you can. In C++, it does kind of the same thing, and in Python, you can just print out an exception. You notice that the type of the exception, if we printed out the type of the error, error, it would actually just come out as like a value error. And you can actually do error dot, right, this kind of stuff. So let's see what happens. I don't actually know what happens when we do this. So let's do it. So print, we want it to be, so XYZ. Oh, wow, look at that. So yeah, so this traceback thing is basically telling you what the problem is. But we don't want that because that's causing a type error, which we're not catching. No, you can't quite concatenate rec error into a string because it's not actually a string. You can do string on rec error and then do plus some other thing, right? Like that. You can do that. Okay, so that's a bit about how to catch errors. So basically, this is pretty useful for input. On the other hand, I guess there's the other question of like, so that's just a bunch of stuff that has to do with try and accept. Yeah, I guess we'll talk about creating a new error. All right, yeah, let's say that you want to create a new error. So I kind of did this when I implemented my version of the project, which you're not allowed to do, okay? You're not allowed to do this, but just, whatever. So basically here, if you want to create a new error type, you can do that. And then I think you inherit from exception. Let's see. So this is the code that you need to do it. So this is actually class inheritance. And so you can do def like init. And then I'm not sure if you need to. So I think this should work. Will you be able to use it on the final? I would say probably not. So I think the right way to understand about like why Kind of. On the C error thing, it's a little bit like that. So let's do something. What should we do? Oh, I know what to do. Let's say int input enter numerator, right? And then here we'll have enter denominator. And then what we're going to do is we'll say this is x and this is y, and then we'll try to compute x divided by y. And so remember that all of this code needs a try. Well, it doesn't really need a try. Let's not actually try that code. Let's just say z is equal to this, and then let's return z. So, but what if y is equal to 0 and we'd be dividing by 0? So let's say if y is equal to 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to raise the new error type. And you can put in a message here. You shouldn't divide. I don't know, I always do the single ticks. Unfortunately, super is way beyond the scope of the course. So exception is the parent class here. So the way to explain it is that exception is the parent class. Super gets that class and says, hey, parent class, execute your own constructor, right? And I'm not 100% sure if it's necessary. It might not be necessary, but I'm just throwing it in just in case. So if y is equal to 0, then we raise the new error type. You shouldn't divide by 0. And then here we just return z. Now, you notice here that raise is a new keyword. Raise allows you to throw an exception. So for instance, if I were to call my function, let me just call it 5 times. And then we'll just print out the result. Yeah, so basically all this stuff is like week 7, 6 to 8 of 202. So that's why I'm really not teaching it very well, is because I'm intentionally not teaching it. I'm just saying that I think I might need this code. If you are ever doing this in Python, then you can refer back to this lecture and kind of copy paste what I did. Yeah, classes have families. So classes can have parent classes and child classes. Basically what a parent class is that if you make a class that's a child class, then what's going to happen is that the child class will inherit all the functions from the parent class. So let's see what happens when we do this. Okay, first I need to do this. Staff. How many times do you want to go? 2. All right, enter numerator 3, denominator 5. Okay, cool. Enter numerator 1, denominator 17. Okay, enter numerator 3, denominator, and now here we go, 0. And now watch what's about to happen. Notice here that we have the same kind of thing that you're used to when you do something naughty. Yeah, these videos will be up after the semester. I mean, the standard application of inheritance is basically something like this. You say, like, class animal, right? And then you'll say class dog, right? And a dog is an animal. And a cat, animal. And a, say, what is it? Lemur is an animal. And so, say we have a function in here called and it does this, then this average lifespan function, and of course you might say, well, what about average life here? Let's declare it. Zero. You don't always need to do the super constructor, so in this case I don't actually think I need to do it, but so watch what happens here. So if I do self.average, average life, we'll say 10 years for a dog, right? Say it's 20 years for a cat, say it's 5 years for a lemur, right? Why does it not like my init? Oh, it wants me to do, it wants me to do this. It's not happy. But actually, I don't think I need it, so I'm gonna take it out. Even though I know it's gonna be unhappy with me, but I'm gonna just take it out. So then what we can do here is we can say lemur L is equal to lemur, and then L dot print or average lifespan. Print this, and then for instance we can do a print on say cat. So let's make a cat equals cat. A dog, which is equal to dog, and then we can do cat dot average lifespan, and we can do dog dot average lifespan. So now what you'll see is that this function here has been inherited by all of its child classes. So let's enter an integer, 3. Okay, and so you see here that even though up here we define it at 0, we've redefined it in each of the child classes, so it's a different value in each one of the children's classes, right? It's 10 here, 20 here, and 5 here, and so it's a different value in each child class, and this function we get for free, right? This function is in this class, it's in this class, and it's in this class, and the reason why it's in all of these classes, even though it's not written here, is because we tell a dog that is an animal. Cat is an animal, a lemur is an animal, right? So that's what we do here. Okay. Yeah, if you don't redefine it, it would just stay as 0. So here let's enter the numerator, 7 and 7, 3 and 5 again, and then 1 and say 0, and so remember that this is what's it's throwing a little bit of an exception, right? So this is a problem. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, maybe we'll try here, and we'll call an accept on a new error type as new error, and we'll print out the new error. Okay, so let's do that. Cool, enter numerator. 0, well, I guess 45 over, say, 0. And now let's see what happens. So it says here, you shouldn't divide by 0. And notice that because this try statement is inside the loop, what's happening is that we go through the function again. So now we can enter 2 and 2, 3, 9, 1, 17. And let's do it again, and we'll just say 0 divided by 0. And so it says you shouldn't divide by 0. Now, how would you change this if you would want this to, for instance, not actually keep going? And the answer is, what you would do in order to change this is you could always do it this way. So you just push the try out and pull the for in, and then what will happen is that if you ever have an error in this function, let's comment this code out so that it's clear that it's not running. So if you ever have a problem with this function here, what's going to end up happening is that, okay, we really don't care, 33, okay, enter numerator, let's say 4 and 5, so we'll get 0.8, and now here let's do 9 divided by 0, and you'll see what ends up happening here, right? It should theoretically run 5 times, but as soon as the error gets thrown, or raised, then what's going to end up happening is it doesn't just exit out of this print statement, it exits out of this loop. And so basically that's the point here, is that so this is going to exit out of not just this function, but the whole for loop as well. It jumps to here, it never goes back into there. Would a break statement work? I suppose you could also do, like, if you do this, you could just break here, but break is forbidden in this class anyway, so I've been kind of avoiding even mentioning the existence of break. Also, this is kind of better code anyway, so it is possible to put a break in here, like this, right? This is legal, this is definitely fine. But the thing is, actually, why not just do this? It's better code, right? So there's a lot of times where a break statement is actually just not going to help. It's not going to improve your life all that much. So, okay. Okay, and then, okay, cool. So, there we go. Alright, so that's basically what I want to talk about with regard to exceptions. So yeah, try is illegal in 201, but it's not going to be illegal in your future Python life, right? Like once you leave 201, this is the last class that we really do in Python here. So, so the idea here is that I'm telling you stuff now that you can use in your future life, right? Okay. So that's cool. We've done a bit about exceptions, a little bit about okay. So hey dog, wanna come up? No. Okay. Yeah, so there's no other classes that are in Python at the university, at least explicitly. So there's AI, which is in Python, or AI can be in Python, but there's not any formal additional classes in Python here. So, yeah. Okay. And also, this is kind of useful for your future life in 341 and 202 because C++ has, they don't use the term except, they use the term catch, but everything else is basically the same. Yeah, she wandered away. Okay. So I think I'll spend the rest of the lecture. Yeah, so in C++, except is equal to catch, and raise is equal to throw. So they just use different keywords. So for instance, let's see here. Do I have some? Here's some C++ stuff. Oh, well. Okay. Basically here, you can always, you would try, but then, so this is the code for try in C++, and then instead of, your code here, and then instead of except, you would just do catch, and then here you would say something like, what is it? Maybe range error, who knows? And then you can see out, say, there was a range error, or whatever. So it's all basically the same, right? So this is like the C++ equivalent. Void means that the thing doesn't have a return type, right? Void just means it doesn't return anything. Okay. So I think I'll spend the rest of the lecture doing a little bit on Flask. Yeah, really it's the other way around. Java looks similar to C++, right? Java syntax was explicitly modeled on C++ syntax. Well, and yeah, I think that's basically the way to say it. All right, so let's look at my Flask lecture, and let's remind myself how to do Flask. So basically, let's create a new Flask server. Okay. So let me steal some code. I think all I need is this. And then here's if name equals main. Cool. And then I think we need to make an app. So what you need to do is you need to create an app. And then you just do app.run. Is it port equals, say, run it on the greatest, oh no, we should run it on port 81. All right, yeah, let's run it on 1729. Okay. So what happens when I run this? So, what should I do? Let me make this smaller. Yeah, let me just put this here. You see that we don't get anything. But that's okay. So we're not quite there yet. Okay. So let me just pull this up in a different window so that I can cheat off my old code. This is what we want to do. So here's a little bit of fun Python stuff. These are called decorators. And we are not going to really talk about them at all. Okay? So okay. So let's print trying to create a main page. And so now here what we're going to do is we're going to return something. So you have to have a template directory. So let me create a new HTML file. Sure, let's call it real fun. So sure. What's the title of our? So you see that it even creates a nice little HTML page for us. The title is going to be, I don't know. This is our new web page. Be aware. And here it's going to say something like, this page rendered successfully. Right? So now let's restart our server. And let's see. Did I do everything right? I didn't. I didn't, because I need to return render template. And the template that we're going to render is going to be real fun. The one thing that you have to do is make sure that your stuff, your HTML files, are in a directory called templates. Otherwise, Flask will have a hugely hard time finding things. See here it says template file not found. I think it'll still work, but there are better ways to configure it. So let's rerun this, because we need the right code. Okay, so now we should see something when this happens. Let's hit refresh. Oh, look at that. Look at that. So here we open this thing up. It says this page rendered successfully, right? So that's great. and here it printed out trying to create the main page. So you see, this is now a web server, right? So I've just made myself a little web server that runs on my local machine. It's not internet facing. At least I don't think it is, but I think you'd have to know my IP address in order to actually access this thing. Okay. So, all right, cool. So now what else can you do? Well, so I have a bunch of things in here. I have some pictures, I guess. So sure, let's load up a picture, right? Let's go to the HTML web thing, and let's say and let me remember how to do this. I think here. I guess let me open one of these pages. Pick select. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, let's do that. Or I think, is it that? Or is it just image? Let's just copy paste this. Image source. That's right. Not href. It's not a link. Just an image. So let's render some images on the page, right? And if you don't really know the HTML for this stuff, the good news is I don't really either, so who cares? And so what you can do is then, so this is going to create a little bit of a problem. So, and the problem is that the thing is not going to know where to get the images from. You see, it's trying to get, let's see. Let's restart. I think sometimes it loads it into the cache in a minute. So you see here, it tried to load picture 1, picture 2, and picture 3, and that didn't work. So what we can do, and here's a trick that I came up with, is you can do an app.root, and you can do this with image name .jpeg. And so what this is going to do is any time that someone tries to load an image, what you can do is then you can say, instead of here, it doesn't have this extra static directory on it. So what you want to do here is you're going to say def get image, right, like I did. And the good news is that because this stuff is in brackets, Flask is going to give it to you, pass it as a variable name. So we can print out the image name here, and then we will have the image name as a file name, and then what we can do is there's actually a send file. There's a send file command that you can use like this. So I have send file here. So let's see if this fixes it, right? There we go. So that's. Of course, they're all very different sizes, like a small image of mouse that's medium, and then this gigantic, looks like a bacon cheeseburger. So basically, like this is all you really need to get something up and running really quick in terms of like a website or something like that. This allows you to run a server on your own page, or on your own computer. And so, you know, if you then, let's say that, let's add a link on this page, right? Let's say we're going to do ahref equals, let's say, let's do something, list states.html. Okay? Click here for a boring list of states. Right? So first, let's see what happens. I think it should, when it loads, is it going to get the link? It doesn't. So it does cache it. Yeah, you can always add a CSS file if you want. So let's look at this thing. So there should be a link here. And so I'm going to click it and see what happens. So here it's trying to get the list of states.html, which doesn't exist. So let's make one, right? If it says no module name Flask, let's see here. So you gotta, if you don't have the import statement, right? So yeah, that's the reason why we don't really teach this stuff. So basically, if it says no module name Flask, then that means that you're gonna have to search, either it didn't install correctly, or you're not importing it correctly, or something else is going on and you're going to have to find that. Import errors are always the hardest to fix in Python, so if you're having issues with that, I would say maybe, after you've done project 3 and everything, you can always ask me about it. Send me a DM and we can work on it, but it's not something that's very easy, okay? So let's list the states. I think I want this. So I want to show you an example of something that's kind of cool here. So this is actually not HTML anymore. This is going to be, yeah, I'm sorry about that. So UL means that we're going to make a list, and LI means this is a list element. But let's say that we want to list all of these states out of a certain file, right? So I have a file here, which if you notice, let's see, where is it? United States. So here's a United States.txt. You notice it has 50 lines, it has 50 states, right? So what we're going to do with this file is we're going to make a list of things. So let me just show you what happens if we, instead of using anything that I'm about to talk about, let's just say we do Alabama, Texas, Maryland. Okay, and so we're going to do that. And then let's go back here and let's create a new root for our app. So if it's asking for, what is it, list states.html, we're going to render the template of list states.html. And that's what we need to do. Okay, so let's try to do it. What the heck have I done? Assertion error. View function mapping is overwriting an existing endpoint function render main page. Wonderful. Okay, so it's not liking this. Why is it not liking this? Help me out here. This is fine. It says it's overwriting it says view function mapping is overwriting an existing endpoint function render main page. So I guess what it's, oh. Okay. So yeah, that was the problem. So this wasn't found because of that. So okay, so let me do this instead. Okay. Cool. So if you notice here, this is our little list of states. Not very exciting. But this is what the UL and LI are doing, right? UL is basically the container, the HTML container that this is sitting in, and each one of these are little LIs. And so what you can do here is now that you're convinced that that works, what we can actually do is something like this. And you might notice this is not exactly HTML, right? This is some other thing. So this is its own little scripting language that exists within HTML. And so what this does is, yeah, so this will read, well, so this doesn't actually read out of the .text. This reads out of a secret object, right? The object is called states. And so what we need to do is we need to pass a states object to the function. So let me show you how to do that. So how do you pass states to our new Flask server? So what you do is you say states equals states, or maybe the states, right? Now you might ask yourself, well, okay, but how do we get the states? For this, you just need to do a bit of file reading. So with open United States.txt as states file, right? And then you say say for line in the states file. We can append it to the list, right? Maybe strip it off, just so that we get rid of that end line character, right? So what this does is this makes us a little list, so we can print out the states here. And so then we send in the states as a keyword argument. So this keyword argument basically says that we're going to create a variable called states and send it in, and it's equal to this value. It's not really, there was no states variable before. It all gets absorbed into what's called like the default keyword arguments. And you can see examples of that. Maybe I'll talk about that next class. So for instance here, if we do this, and then we go back to our web page. Let's go back, click here. And so you notice that the first thing that happened was it printed out our list of states. This is right out of the text file. And this is just the print command onto standard out. So this is not really anything webby. But then you notice here, look at this, right? It created this web page which had all the states in a single list. So you can see the possible applications of something like this, right? Where you can pass data from Python into, yep, that's right. Python is running some HTML code, yeah. So basically what this, it's all being done by a render template. So render template changes this thing into an HTML, a purely HTML file. And so if you, like, for instance, if we look at the page source on this thing, we're not going to see that for loop. So let me show you what the page source looks like. Look at this, right? So what does this mean to you? What this means to you is that the server, the Python end, right? Python is the server end, and this browser here, Firefox, is the client end or the user end or whatever you want to call it. And so here you see that these list elements have been created by the for loop that's inside of this thing, right? But you notice that this is not what appears in the page source. What actually appears in the page source is literally the output from that. And so that is what render template does for you. Render template takes your initial templated HTML file with perhaps with some of this this extra code in it. Yeah, exactly. It's like using a program to write a program. It's a little bit like that. And what it does is it renders the template into something that it can then send to Firefox. So this is good for two reasons. One reason is that a lot of the stuff is being done on the server side rather than the client side. And the other thing is that it allows you to create pages with additional data in them, right? So yeah, so this is all kind of an interesting thing to do, I think. And then let's see, what else is there here? Yeah, so just remember that none of this, I should even put this at the top here. Well, this stuff, you're not going to be doing this stuff in C++. Like, there's not really a class that will, maybe until you take maybe networks. I'm not sure if there's ever actually a time when you're going to be doing this stuff. Until you get a job. And then you'll be doing this stuff. So, yeah. I think, let's try this form example. I'm not 100% sure what this form example does. So, interesting. Look at this. So, I wrote this before. So, what is your name? What is your quest? What is your favorite color? So, I have a bunch of little inputs, I guess, right? We have some inputs. Let's see if this actually works. I forget if this works. Let's try to steal it. So, so let's see what happens here. The form example, yeah. Huh. Okay. So that's what you need. So there's some modifications you have to do in order to get data as well. So basically, note here, so what is get? Get is the HTML request for the website. And then what is post? That is the HTML request from the website with the data, okay? So that's the point here, all right? And so what I have here, I have some code here. So if request dot method is equal to post, then what we can do here is we can say the name is equal to request dot form dot get and then name. And the reason and the way that we link this together is that you notice here the name of this input is name, the name of this input is quest, and the name of this input is color. So that's how we're getting these pieces of data. Why does it not like this? What's wrong? Oh, double equal. Okay, and then what we can do here is we can do and here we can say return a render template of the form example.html with answers equals to answers. Now for some reason I had it happening that way and I'm not sure why. Oh, Oh, I see what this is doing. This is even more crazy than. So I was appending it to a list, and you'll see why in a second. So we need to create an answers thing. And answers is just a list here. Okay, so now let's run the server and see if this works, because I'm kind of curious. So let's go to our web page, and instead of going to list states, let's just go to quest. And so here we'll have, what is my name? My name is Eric. What is my quest? To find the meaning of life. And what's my favorite color? Blue. Cool. And then what's my name? Jimmy. What's my quest? To understand the nature of pies. And what's my favorite color? It's red. Right, and so maybe Rebecca, right? Her quest is to run the marathon. And her favorite color is green. So you see that every time that we add another answer, what's happening is that it's going through, to find the Holy Grail, exactly. And so it's every time we add a new name, quest, and favorite color, it's like adding it to the bottom here. And the reason why it's doing that is because we have this list of answers that we're given. And so answers is equal to answers. And then you notice here that this for answer in answers. So we go through all the different answers that get passed in. This is how it links it together, right? So it uses this keyword here, and then it looks for a variable in your Python code, or not in your Python code. Yeah, kind of in your Python. It looks for a variable here in this keyword argument list that matches. And so it says, oh, answers matches with answers, so we're good to go. And then here it goes through all the answers. It does a for loop, and then it puts in. So what these double braces do is they render whatever thing that is. So for instance, if you just put answer 0 here, this would just come out as literally the text answer 0. But when you encapsulate it in these two brackets, then what this does is it forces the render template function to look at it, and it pulls it out, and it sticks in whatever the answer 0 is, answer 1, answer 2. Right, so that's why that's done that way. Oh wow, there's an error. Element table is not closed. Oh, wait, no, it seems closed to me. I don't know. It seems confused. Well, anyway, okay. I think this has been a good example of like how to go from 0 to, web development in like what, 30 minutes. I'm not saying you should understand everything we've done here. I'm not saying you're gonna like absolutely 100% be able to do this by memory. In fact, I am not doing it by memory. I'm using the code I created previously to help me because I haven't used Flask in about 6 months or a year. So if you're wondering like what Flask is a module that basically does a huge amount of the work for us, right? It runs the server. It allows, whenever a request comes in, it sends out the HTML answer, it sends out files. It does a lot of stuff, right? That we would want to do. It's also a very, shall we say, pared down and simplified package. So, and what I mean by that is that there's the other things out there like Ruby on Rails and Django. Zan, you've asked that question before, right? You know what the answer is to that, don't you? Right? So anyway, yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff that Flask doesn't do for you. Like it doesn't actually do logins. It doesn't do a lot of other kind of more advanced stuff. So there are other modules, for instance, right? Right, so there's like Flask login, but this is not this isn't the default Flask package. Okay, so basically I think this is a good example of how to begin web development. I would say that if you're interested in doing anything like this, I've seen some people play around with this stuff. They've used my examples and they've kind of built up more interesting things. Obviously, if you actually know HTML and CSS, then you can make beautifully excellent looking web pages. You know, you can do a lot with this technology. And if you don't know it, then you can play around with these examples. So I'm going to upload all this to the GitHub so that you have everything here that I've done. I'll upload all of these things here, so let's add them. And then let's commit everything, right? Except for whatever that is. Okay. Git commit. Let's commit it as web dev. Okay, and then once I push, I think that's about it for the lecture. Yeah, so just remember, none of this stuff can be used in 201, unfortunately. It's all, this is all future life stuff, right? None of this stuff is for this class. The reason why I teach this stuff is mainly because we have an extra week, and doing 3 days of review would be way too much and terribly boring. So, and then the other reason is that, you know, in your future life, you will probably need to know about exceptions. So seeing exceptions a little bit is good. And I did a little bit of request stuff you can look at, did a little bit of Flask stuff. So next time I think I'm going to do a little bit of what's called tkinter, and that's a graphical user interface package. It's one that comes by default with Python. There's a huge number of other ones like Qt5 and Qt4. And then there's like the Windows API, there's, you know, Java FX, there's Java Swing. There's a whole bunch of different graphical packages that you can use in various different languages. I'm just going to preview one of them, and I'll just show you kind of how Python deals with it. And maybe I'll teach some other stuff, who knows. I think that's what next lecture is going to be. All right, everyone. Yeah, so if you're interested, you can go, and I guess I'll upload this file as well, right? Because you need the, not that the states are anything terribly interesting. It's just you need them if you're going to run the website. Okay, there you go. I think that's everything. I'll see you all next lecture. Hopefully this was entertaining, a little bit interesting. We will talk about other future Python topics, and then next week we'll do final exam review. And then it'll be final exam time. All right. Have a good day.